starting in 5 seconds. I am pleased to inaugurate the 8th Center of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's Gandhi Institute of Computer Education and Information Technology. I have also had the honor of inaugurating the 7th Center of the Institute in September. It has been set up at my ancestral home in Gwalior by a trust established in my father's memory. It provides free computer education to students from underprivileged sections of society. Many may wonder why this institute, which is dedicated to providing training in information technology, bears the name of Mahatma Gandhi. There is a misconception that Gandhiji was opposed to technology, and here we are dealing with information technology, which is at the cutting edge of high tech. It is necessary to remove this misconception. I am not an expert in IT. I have not even used a computer any time in my life. But I know that information technology promotes some of the essential components of the Gandhian and Indian vision of development. First and foremost, computers and other advances in IT, such as the internet, are a powerful tool for acquiring knowledge. And Gyan, as we all know, is highly extolled in our culture. Gyan Marg is indeed one of the paths to liberation. Secondly, IT is a major leveler in society. It empowers people even from underprivileged classes to quickly come up in life. It rewards people with ideas and innovativeness, as it amply borne out by the success stories of Indian IT professionals and entrepreneurs abroad. In recent years, we have many success stories in India too. IT will increase employment opportunities and generate wealth both directly and indirectly. Shri Murli Dhera tells me that all those who have completed their computer education course at the Gandhi Institute have got well paid jobs in business and in industry. Thirdly, IT will lead to decentralization of production and decognition of our urban centers. When the whole world gets connected, people will be able to do their work wherever they are. In the highly driven world of the 21st century, what will be movable is information and not people. In short, IT is rapidly revolutionizing every aspect of our economy, education, communication, and entertainment. That is why, at a recent meeting in Bangalore, I urged the people to realize that IT stands for India's tomorrow. This is very much more for our people as such. For me, it is very satisfying to see the rapid spread of information technology in the country. But we need to march faster. That is why my government has set up the National Task Force on Information Technology and Software Development. In a short span of 6 months, the government has taken a number of initiatives to promote IT in the country. We have already accepted and started implementing the first report of the task force focusing on software development for exports. Our aim is to achieve software exports worth $50 billion by the year 2008. Just 2 days ago, the task force has submitted its second report aimed at making India a major hardware manufacturing center. It is presently being examined by a ministerial committee. I announced the salient features of the new internet policy in Bangalore last week. It allows companies in the private sector to become internet service providers. As promised, licenses will be issued to private internet service providers before November 7. We believe that the creation of a modern high speed telecom infrastructure is a precondition for making India an IT superpower. The government has therefore initiated major steps to resolve outstanding issues in the telecom sector. The spread of IT depends on two more factors: cheaper computers and more people trained to use them. In order to address these issues, the government will soon unveil three schemes aimed at increasing the number of PCs in the education sector. Vidyarthi Computer Scheme. The highlight of these schemes will be to make available a multimedia have innovative financial packages to make a computer affordable even to ordinary families. In recent years, there has been a huge increase in the number of computer training institutes. Every small town has such institutes which are training young and not so young people to use computers. Some of these institutes have become huge companies worth hundreds of crores thanks to the efficient way they run their business. Our colleges and universities can learn some lessons from them. I congratulate these institutes for rapidly spreading computer awareness and training many people to use computers. However, these institutes suffer from one flaw: they understandably cater only to those who can afford their high fees. It is a sign of the times that many middle class families are spending most of their savings in sending their children to these training institutes more. However, if computer education is confined only to those who know English, India will not become an IT superpower. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, I rise to support the bill as it proposes to amend the Constitution in a manner so that the most important and the urgent need of our people may be included in our Constitution as fundamental right. Right to work is the essential condition of our existence as a human being. You know, sir, through work, man distinguishes himself from beast and develops his capability to be the master of his fate and controls the nature and build up the civilization. This power to work helps him to control the nature and to use it in his interest. He produces his bread and thus continues his existence. Without work, how can a man earn his livelihood? So, it is absolutely related to the question of his existence. But today, this existence of man is challenged in our country. The unending queue of unemployed people is increasing day by day. There is no security of his existence as he has no means of production at his disposal. In a developing country like ours, the unemployment problem is the most burning problem. We have no opportunity to work and no right to work. The number of unemployed people registered with the employment exchanges in our country is more than 2 crores. But this is not the real picture. In the rural areas, the uneducated masses of unemployed youth do not register their names with the employment exchange offices. the agricultural laborer, poor peasants from the bulk of the rural are unemployed. Besides, they do not get jobs for all the time throughout the year. More people are entering into cultivation on the same size of land, thus increasing the number of hidden unemployed people. The rural poor, such as agricultural laborer, bounded laborer, poor peasants, etc., are the major part of rural unemployed. With them, the other sections of the small and middle peasantry and rural artisans are gradually losing their land and their small means of production. Sharecroppers are being evicted from the land, and sharecroppers day by day are getting more and more improvised. The middle class people are also the most unfortunate victims of unemployment. Workers are thrown out of their jobs due to lockout, closure, and recession in the economy. Taking all of them together, the number of unemployed in our country works out to be more than 6 crores. But how can they live without a job? After 65 years of our independence, the ruling class is far behind in getting these peoples out of this problem. We are making plans one after another. But what is the result? After the first 5 year plan, the number of the registered unemployed people stood at 20 lakhs. After the second 5 year plan, it rose to 35 lakhs. After the third 5 year plan, it crossed the line of 53 lakhs. After the fourth plan, it was more than 80 lakhs, and now it is 2 crores. This is the reality in spite of the ruling party's tall talks of socialistic pattern of society, democratic socialism, and ultimately socialism and new economic program. The ruling party have been crying from the housetops about the so-called socialism in our country. The number of unemployed in the country has been increasing because their socialism is a fake socialism and it is to deceive the people only. They talk of socialism only because they know people love and like it. People believe that without socialism, unemployment problem cannot be solved. What is socialism? It is only the scientific socialism which is the real socialism and which is abolishes exploitation of man by man, which abolishes private property system in the economy, which takes the means of production in the hands of the state and which guarantees the right to work. But in our socialism, the rich becomes richer and poor becomes poorer. This is really capitalism under the guise of socialism. This is fake socialism and this is only to deceive the people. Can we claim of building socialism without making the right to work as a fundamental right? We cannot. In all the socialistic countries, this right to work is guaranteed by the constitution as a fundamental right. I would like to quote the relevant articles from the constitution of a few socialistic countries. Article 40 of the Erstwhile USSR Constitution says that the citizens of the USSR have the right to work, that is to guaranteed employment and pay in accordance with the quantity and quality of their work and not below the state established minimum, including the right to choose their trade and profession. Article 49 of the Constitution of China says citizens have the right to work. To ensure that citizen enjoys this right, the state provides employment in accordance with the principle of overall consideration and on the basis of increased production, the state gradually increases payment for labor, improves working conditions, and strengthens labor protection. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, unfortunately, for most of us, what is decided by the highest judicial authority in our country is that the directive principles are not as important as fundamental rights. It is most unfortunate. I do not mean any criticism against any individual sitting judge. I mean criticism from the point of view of the principle adopted to decide the cases. The directive principles are not only the duties cast upon the state, they are a sort of right available to the citizens as a whole in the country, to the society as a whole. We consider the right available to an individual and we do not consider the right available to so many individuals in the country. We are committing a mistake somewhere. They have decided that because directive principles are not justifiable, fundamental rights are more important, and when a law is made to implement the directive principles, if it goes against the fundamental rights, it has to be struck down. That is most unfortunate. There is a decided case in which a Harijan student was admitted in a medical college and a law was made for that purpose. The case went to the High Court of Madras and it decided that equality before a law is not available under that act because all students should be treated equal and so the admission was cancelled. That was most unfortunate. It is a different thing that the judgment was reversed and so many other steps were taken, and we have now in our country students from scheduled castes and tribes getting admission to medical colleges on priority. It is all there, but that is a different thing. Only a few days back, in this house itself, I do not mean any disrespect to the honorable members who pleaded the cause in the most beautiful, most effective manner. What have we decided? There was a law brought before this House which said that in order to protect the skull and brain of an individual, he should wear helmet. Then, because of the prevailing religious and other social circumstances, certain citizens were given exemption from this. He said that if you do this, somebody will go to the court and get an injunction against this because there is discrimination between women in this country. What was the result? The result was that the honorable minister had to say that the ladies would be exempted. With respect to what my friend is asking us to do, I am one with him. I would be the happiest person if this is included in the chapter on fundamental rights. I would be the happiest person. But there are certain difficulties, and those difficulties are to be taken into account. My dear friend, standing here, said that unless you change some other provisions in the Constitution, it is not going to be possible for you to implement these fundamental rights, even if we try to implement it. This is the problem the government is faced. In Maharashtra, the employment guarantee resolution was passed and then the law was passed. Now we are trying to see that this is included in the fundamental right chapter. But there was difficulty in America when President Roosevelt under the New Deal made a law to see that those who were in service were not retrenched in the recession period. That law was challenged in the Supreme Court and that law was first struck down. When he came out openly and when he said, I will pack the benches, that pack the benches phrase changed the entire situation and a different judgment was given and law was again declared as not ultra virus of the constitution. That is the position there. Now, if you make a change of this kind, if you pass a law that is not going to help us, it may somehow or other create so many difficulties. We have Article 32 in our Constitution. What does Article 32 provide? And also Article 226. Article 32 provides the right to an individual to go to the Supreme Court in order to enforce the fundamental right made available to the citizens. In Fundamental Rights chapter, Article 32 is also there. I do not mean that the people should misinterpret me misinterpret me when I say that Article 32 creates difficulty and the Article 32 should not be there. I do not mean that Article 32 would be necessary. Difficulty arises as Article 32 is there and if fundamental rights is made available to the citizen can directly go to the Supreme Court. Article 32 says that writ can be issued against the government. There is a right available to the citizen in the fundamental right. Article 32 is there and Article 226 which is not treated as a part of fundamental rights chapter also gives the same kind of right to citizen in the high court as given under the fundamental rights chapter. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I would just like to touch briefly on a few aspects of this question of national transport policy. This report is a very valuable report, but like many of its predecessors and successors, I think it is being consigned to the pigeon holes or cold storage, whatever you like to call it, and most of the recommendations that you find in this report have not been implemented by the government, whether it is the central government or the state government or the two of them having joint responsibility in some of these matters. The problems which are facing the country in this respect are getting more and more acute. Sir, you will forgive me if I speak with particular preference to some of the problems as they affect my state and my part of the country, not because of any local or partisan outlook, but because I just got very limited time at my disposal. About freight equalization, there is a whole chapter in this report. I only wish to point out that report itself has stated categorically that the original purpose of railway freight equalization was to stimulate the dispersal of industries, but they have also admitted that this object has not been achieved, and rather than helping the proper and optimal dispersal of industries, it has actually added to the real transport costs. Now, for example, in West Bengal, iron and steel which are available in our region are covered by freight equalization, so that is an advantage enjoyed by the engineering industries located in other states at great distance like Maharashtra and so on. But In the reverse process, you will find that Bengal does not grow any raw cotton. We have got textile industries and all the raw material cotton has to be brought from cotton growing areas, but it is not covered by freight equalization. So our textile industry offers this disadvantage in competition with other older textile centers. Similarly, consumer goods have also not been covered. We have to get all our sugar from outside. We do not grow any sugarcane. Even mustard oil, which is the normal cooking medium for most of the people in Bengal, strangely enough, has to be brought from outside. Mustard oil seeds have to be brought from outside, which are grown much more in Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, and other parts of the country. Coal, I believe, is not actually covered by this freight equalization, but there exists a system of telescopic rates as a result of which the consumers of coal who are situated at a great distance from the coal fields are actually enjoying the advantage of the telescopic rates. It is another form of freight equalization, even if formally it may not be so. I think that it is high time the government should make up its mind as to what to do with this freight equalization, which has been in force for some considerable time. So I strongly plead that this recommendation of the committee should be taken seriously. They had spoken about phasing out 4 or 5 years ago. I think it is high time that this equalization policy was given up. It is working to the advantage of some states, but it is working against the interests of other states. Therefore, it becomes an issue not of harmonious reconciliation of interests, but it becomes an issue of controversy and dispute and added to interstate tension and disputes. Then I would like to say something about the Kolkata port with which the Honorable Minister of Shipping and Transport is very much concerned. This report has spoken about the phase that most of our inland waterways are facing very serious hazards, that is to say, hazards of shallow water, erosion of the banks of the rivers, and so on. But of all the inland waterways, the one which is never described as an island waterways because it happens to be one of the major rivers of this country is the Ganga. When it reaches the Gangetic Delta, when it becomes known more familiarly as the river Hogli. Everybody knows that for years we are grappling with this problem, that unless something is done to improve the navigability of that river, the Kolkata port is is shrinking, and it can no longer receive large vessels as it used to at one time. And this is all 740 due to situation of the river, for which government has spent a considerable amount of money constructing the Faraka barrage in the hope that we would get an extra flow of water from the Ganga diverted through the Faraka barrage, which would flush out the accumulated silt from the Hogli river and thus permit navigability to the increased. But I regret to say that this is not happening at all. I think the state government has drawn the attention of the center only a couple of weeks ago that despite the agreement, we are not getting the required water. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Thereafter, on January 16, 2006, the Indian company issued payment instructions to HSBC Bank, Dubai for an amount of rupees 16 crores to be deposited in the account of the defendant number 1 in Andhra Bank, Chennai. According to the plaintiffs, contribution was towards equity share capital held by defendant numbers 3 and 4. Share certificates were also issued and recorded as having beneficial interest by the ETA group. Later, on March 6, 2006, the Indian company received further investment through 4 demand drafts amounting to rupees 3 lakhs from defendant number 12, which was recorded as beneficial interest of the defendant number 2. Defendant number 11 is in possession of these shares as well. It has been further stated that between December 2005 and March 2006, a total sum of rupees 16 crores had been received by the Indian company from defendant numbers 12 and 2 towards issue allotment of shares. On June 25, 2009, defendant number 3 issued a personal check of rupees 2 crores, which was honored on July 7, 2009 in the accounts of defendant number 2 and reflected that the investment was made in the Indian company. On June 28, 2009, a further investment was made in the Indian company by defendant number 12 to the tune of rupees 2 crores through payment instructions to Emirates Bank to debit the same, which was actually credited on July 1st, 2009. In 2011, 2 investments were made on December 26, 2011 to the tune of rupees 18 crores by payment instructions to Bank of Baroda, debiting the amount of defendant number 12 and crediting the account of the Indian company. Thereafter, share certificates in the names of the defendant numbers 3 and 4 were issued by the defendant number 1 around February 10, 2012. The plaintiffs also stated that defendant numbers 3 to 7 admitted and acknowledged that defendant number 2 had a beneficial interest in the share certificates of the India company issued in their names. Defendant numbers 3 to 7, however, do not have physical possession of these 2,70,000 shares, the same being held by defendant number 11. It was also contended in the plaint that defendant blank had share transfer forms of the company. Accordingly, it was urged that defendant number 2 has a beneficial interest over the share of defendant number 1 but held in the names of defendant numbers 3 to 7. It was further urged in the plaint that deconsolidation of the accounts and businesses of defendant number 2 with that of defendant number 11 was affected in 2016 with retrospective effect from 2014. The same was on account of defendant number 3, 4 and 7 to sign the financial statements of defendant number 2. It was also urged that till the time the Indian company had requirements for funds, the interest of dividend defendant number 2 was acknowledged and it was stopped subsequently. It was further urged that the entire remittance towards the suit shares of 6.16% of the Indian company were by the funds provided by defendant number 12 or defendant number 2 and no part of the funds came from the personal accounts of defendant numbers 3 to 7. It was further urged by the plaintiffs that defendant numbers 8 to 10 had direct knowledge of these facts. It is pertinent to mention here that there is no dispute regarding the fact that the decision of the board of directors of the group journal body followed by defendant number 11 through the draft financial statement would impact the beneficial interest of defendant number 2 in the shares held by in the name of defendant numbers 3 to 7, which was the subject matter of the suit. Plaintiff number 2 under these circumstances wrote the letter dated June 1, 2017 to defendant number 8, the managing director of the Indian company, protesting that the investments made by defendant number 2 were denied. Defendant number 1 through its letter dated June 7, 2017 refused to take notice of the claim asserted by the ETA group. Plaintiff number 2 thereafter sent another letter dated June 12, 2017 to the Indian company addressed to the managing director of the Indian company giving details in support of the claim of the ETA group. He also called for a meeting in person. However, defendant numbers 8 and 9 along with other directors of the Indian company failed to attend the meeting proposed by plaintiff number 2. However, they sent a letter dated June 27, 2017 stating that they had earlier replied on June 7, 2017 itself and had nothing further to state. Plaintiff number 2 sent another letter dated July 9, 2017 reiterating his original stand. The Indian company responded through the letter. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. All the honorable members have been supplied with copies of this declaration, and so I shall not read it over again. I shall merely point out very briefly some salient features of this declaration. It is a short and simple document in 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph, it will be noticed, deals with the present position in law. It refers to the British Commonwealth of Nations and to the fact that the people in this Commonwealth owe a common allegiance to the Crown. That in law is the present position. The next paragraph of this declaration states that the Government of India have informed the governments of the other Commonwealth countries that India is soon going to be a sovereign independent republic. Further, that they desire to continue her full membership of the Commonwealth of Nations, accepting the King as a symbol of the free association. The third paragraph says that the other Commonwealth countries accept this, and the fourth paragraph ends by saying that all these countries remain united as free and equal members of the Commonwealth of Nations. You will notice that while in the first paragraph this is referred to as the British Commonwealth of Nations, in the subsequent paragraph, it is referred to only as the Commonwealth of Nations. Further, you will notice that while in the first paragraph there is the question of allegiance to the crown which exists at present, this question does not arise later because India, by becoming a republic, goes outside the crown area completely. There is a reference in connection with the Commonwealth to the king as the symbol of that association. Observe that the reference is to the king and not to the crown. It is a small matter, but it has a certain significance. But the point is this, that in so far as the Republic of India is concerned, her constitution and her working are concerned. She has nothing to do with any external authority, and none of her subjects of any allegiance to the king or any other external authority. The Republic may agree to associate herself with certain other countries that happen to be monarchies or whatever they choose to be. This declaration states that this new Republic of India completely sovereign and owing no allegiance to the king as the other Commonwealth countries do owe, will be a full member of the Commonwealth. I am placing the declaration before this Honorable House for its approval. Beyond this approval, there is no question of any law being framed in accordance with it. There is no law behind the Commonwealth. It has not even the formality which normally accompanies treaties. It is an agreement by free will to be terminated by free will. Therefore, there will be no further legislation or law if the House approves of this. In this particular declaration, nothing very much is said about the position of the king except that he will be a symbol. It has been made perfectly clear that the king has no functions at all. He has been made perfectly clear that the king has no functions at all. He has a certain status. The Commonwealth itself, as such, is not a body, if I may say so. It has no organization through which to function and the king also can have no functions. Now, some consequences flow from this. Apart from certain friendly approaches to one another, apart from a desire to cooperate, which will always be conditioned by each party deciding on the measure of cooperation and following its own policy, there is no obligation. There is hardly any obligation in the nature of commitments, but an attempt has been made to produce something which is entirely novel, and I can very well understand lawyers on the one hand feeling somewhat uncomfortable about a thing for which they can find no precedent or parallel. There may be also be others who feel that behind this there may be something which they cannot quite understand, something risky, something dangerous, because the thing is so simple on the face of it. That kind of difficulty may arise in people's mind. What I have stated elsewhere, I should like to repeat. There is absolutely nothing behind this except what is placed before this house. I might clear up one or two matters which are not mentioned in his declaration. One of these, as I have said, is that the king has no functions at all. This was cleared up in the course of our proceedings. It has no doubt been recorded in the minutes of the conference in London. Another point was that one of the objects of this kind of Commonwealth association is now to create a status which is something between being completely foreign and being of one nationality. Obviously, the Commonwealth countries belong to different nations. They are different nationalities. Normally, either you have a common nationality or you are foreign. There is no intermediate stage up till now in this Commonwealth or the British Commonwealth of Nations. There was a building link which was allegiance to the king. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. The House will remember that there was some talk at one stage of a Commonwealth citizenship. Now, it was difficult to understand what the status of Commonwealth citizenship might be, except that it meant that its members were not completely foreign to one another. That unforeignness remains, but I think it is as well that we left off talking about something vague which could not be surely defined. The other fact also remains, as I have just stated, the fact that we should take the right to ourselves if we so choose to exercise it at any time to enter into treaties or arrangements with Commonwealth countries, assuring us of certain mutual privileges and preferences. I have briefly placed before the House this document. It is a simple document, and yet the House is fully aware that it is a highly important document, or rather, what it contains is of great and historic significance. I went to this conference some weeks ago as the representative of India. I had, of course, consulted my colleagues here previously because it was a great responsibility, and no man is big enough to shoulder that responsibility by himself when the future of India is at stake. For many months past, we had often consulted one another, consulted great and representatives, organizations, consulted many members of this house. Nevertheless, when I went, I carried this great responsibility and I felt the burden of it. I had able colleagues to advise me, but I was the sole representative of India, and in a sense, the future of India for the moment was in my keeping. I was alone in that sense, and yet not quite alone, because as I traveled through the air and as I was there at the conference table, the ghost of many yesterdays of my life surrounded me and brought up picture after picture before me, saints and guardians keeping watch over me, telling me perhaps not to trip and not to forget them. I remember, as many members might remember, that day 19 years ago when we took a pledge for the first time on the bank of the river Ravi at the midnight hour on 26th January, and how we took that off repeated privilege year after repeat in spite of difficulty. And finally I remembered that day when, standing at this very place, I placed a resolution before this house. Let us not be led away by considering the situation in terms of every events which are no longer here. You will see that the resolution of the Congress that I have read out says that because India becomes a republic, the association of India with the Commonwealth must of course change. Further, it says that free association may continue subject only to our complete freedom being assured. Now, that is exactly what has been attempted in this Declaration of London. I ask you or any honorable member to point out in what way the freedom, the independence of India has been limited in the slightest. I do not think it has been. In fact, the greatest stress has been laid not only on the independence of India but on independence of each individual nation in the Commonwealth. I am often asked how we can join a Commonwealth in which there is a racial discrimination, in which there are other things happening to which we object. That I think is a fair question, and it is a matter which must necessarily give us some trouble in our thinking. Nevertheless, it is a question which does not really arise. That is to say, when we have entered into an alliance with a nation or a group of nations, it does not mean that we accept their policies, and it does not mean that we commit ourselves in any way to something that they may do. In fact, this House knows that we are carrying on at the present moment a struggle, or our countrymen are carrying on a struggle in regard to racial discrimination in various parts of the world. The House knows that in the few years, one of the major questions before the United Nations at the instance of India has been the question of Indians in South Africa. May I, if the House will permit me for a moment, referring to an event which took place yesterday, that is the passing of the resolution at the General Assembly of the United Nations, and express my appreciation and my government's appreciation of the way our delegation has functioned in this matter, and our appreciation of all those nations of the United States nations, almost all, in fact, all bearing South Africa, which finally supported the attitude of India, one of the pillars of our foreign policy, repeatedly stated as to fight against racial discrimination, to fight for the freedom of suppressed nationalities. Are we compromising on that issue by remaining in the Commonwealth? We have been fighting on the various issues, even though we have thus far been a dominion of the Commonwealth. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. I am afraid that if we adopted that attitude, then there would hardly be any association for us with any country, because we have disapproved of something or other that country does. Sometimes it so happens that the difference is so great that either you cut off relations with that country or there is a conflict. Some years ago, the United Nations General Assembly decided to recommend to its member states to withdraw diplomatic representatives from Spain because Spain was supposed to be fascist country. I am not going into the merits of the question. Some think that question comes up in that way, the question has come up again, and they have reversed that decision and left it to each member's states to do it as it likes. Take any great country or a small country and see what this means. You do not agree with everything that the Soviet Union does. Therefore, why should you have representation there, or why should you have a treaty of alliance in regard to commercial or trade matters with it? You may not agree with some policies of the United States of America, therefore, you cannot have a treaty states with them. That is not the way nations carry on their foreign policy or any policy. The first thing to realize, I think, is that there are different ways of thinking, different ways of living, and different approaches of life in different parts of the world. Most of our troubles arise from one country imposing its will and its way of living on other countries. It is true that no country can live in isolation because the world as constituted today is progressively becoming an organic whole. If one country living in isolation does something which is dangerous to the other countries have to intervene. To give a rather obvious example, if one country allowed itself to become the breeding ground of all kinds of dangerous disease, the world would have to come in and clear it up because it could not afford to allow disease to spread all over the world. The only safe principle to follow is that, subject to certain limitations, each country should be allowed to live its own life in its own way. There are at present several ideologies in the world, and major conflicts flow from these ideologies, which we will consider later. We join the Commonwealth obviously because we think it is beneficial to us and to certain causes in the world that we wish to advance. The other countries of the Commonwealth want us to remain there because they think it is beneficial to them. It is mutually understood that it is to under advantage of the nations in the Commonwealth, and therefore they join. At the same time, it is made perfectly clear that each country is completely free to go its own way. It may be that they may sometimes go so far as to break away from the Commonwealth. In the world today, where there are so many disruptive forces at work, where we are often on the verge of war, I think it is not a safe thing to encourage the breaking up of any association that one has. Break up the evil part of it, break up anything that may come in way of your growth, because nobody agrees to anything which comes in the way of a nation's growth. Otherwise, apart from breaking the evil parts of the association, it is better to keep going a cooperative association which may do good in this world than to break it. Now, this declaration that is placed before you is not a new move, and yet it is complete reorientation of something that has existed in any entirely different way. Suppose we had been cut off from England completely, and we had then desired to join the Commonwealth of Nations, it would have been a new move. Suppose a new group of nations wanted us to join them and we joined them in this way, that would have been a new move from which various consequences would have flowed. In the present instance, what is happening is that a certain association has been in existence for a considerable time past. A very great change came in the way of that association about a year and 8 or 9 months ago, from August 15, 1947. Now, another major change is contemplated. Gradually, the conception is changing, yet that certain link remains in a different form. Politically, we are completely independent. Economically, we are as independent nations can. Nobody can be 100% independent in the sense of absolute lack of interdependence. India has to depend on the rest of the world for her trade and for many supplies that she needs today for her food, unfortunately, and so many other things. The House knows that inevitably during the past century and more, all kinds of contacts have arisen between England and this country. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Writ petition number 76 of 2016 was filed for declaring right to sexuality, right to sexual autonomy, and right to choice of a sexual partner to be part of the right to life guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution of India, and further to declare Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code to be unconstitutional. When the said writ petition was listed before a 3-judge bench on 8 January 2018, the court referred to a 2-judge bench decision rendered in Suresh Kaushal, wherein this court had overturned the decision rendered by the division bench of the Delhi High Court in Naz Foundation. It was submitted by Mr. Arvind Datar, learned senior counsel, appearing for the writ petitioners on the said occasion, that the 2-judge bench in Suresh Kaushal had been guided by social morality, leaning on majoritarian perception, whereas the issue in actuality needed to be debated upon in the backdrop of constitutional morality. A contention was also advanced that the interpretation placed in Suresh Kaushal upon Article 21 of the Constitution is extremely narrow, and in fact the court has been basically guided by Article 14 of the Constitution. Reliance was placed on the pronouncement in Nalsa case, wherein this court had emphasized on gender identity and sexual orientation. Attention of this court was also invited to a 9-judge bench decision in K.S. Swamy and another versus Union of India and others, wherein the majority speaking through Chandrachud J has opined that sexual orientation is an essential component of rights guaranteed under the Constitution, which are not formulated on majoritarian favor or acceptance. Cole J, in his concurring opinion, referred to the decision in Mosley vs. News Group Newspaper Limited to highlight that the emphasizes for individuals freedom to conduct his sex life and personal relationships as he wishes, subject to the permitted exceptions, countervails public interests. The further submission that was advanced by Mr. Datar was that privacy of the individual having been put on such a high pedestal and sexual orientation having been emphasized in the Nalsa case, section 377 IPC cannot be construed as a reasonable restriction as that would have the potentiality to destroy the individual autonomy and sexual orientation. It is an accepted principle for interpretation that a provision does not become unconstitutional merely because of abuse. Appreciating the said submissions, the three-judge bench stated that certain other aspects need to be noted. Section 377 IPC uses the phraseology carnal intercourse against the order of nature. The determination of order of nature is not a constant phenomenon. Social morality also changes from age to age. The law copes with life and accordingly change take place. The morality that public perceives the constitutional may not conceive of. The individual autonomy and also individual orientation cannot be changed unless the restriction is regarded as reasonable to yield to the morality of the constitution. What is natural to one may not be natural to the other, but the said natural orientation and choice cannot be allowed to cross the boundaries of law, and as the confines of law cannot temper or curtail the inherent right embedded in an individual under Article 21 of the Constitution. A section of people or individuals who exercise their choice should never remain in a state of fear. When we say so, we may not be understood to have stated that there should not be fear of law, because fear of law builds civilized society, but that law must have the acceptability of the constitutional parameters. That is the litmus test. It is necessary to note in the course of hearing on a query being made, and Mr. Datar very fairly stated that he does not intend to challenge that part of section 377 which relates to carnal intercourse with animals, and that apart he confines to consenting acts between two adults. As far as the first aspect is concerned, that is absolutely beyond debate. As far as the second aspect is concerned, that needs to be debated. The consent between two adults has to be the primary precondition. Otherwise, the children would become prey, and protection of the children in all spheres has to be guarded and protected. Taking all the aspects in the cumulative manner, we are of the view that the decision in Suresh Kumar Kaushal's case requires reconsideration. The three-judge bench expressed the opinion that the issues raised should be answered by a larger bench, and accordingly referred the matter to the larger bench. That is how the matter has been placed before us. We have heard the Mr. Mukul Rohtagi, Learned Senior Counsel, assisted by Mr. Saurabh Kirpal, Learned Counsel, appearing for the petitioners in writ petition number 76 of 2016, Mrs. Jaina Kothari, Learned Counsel for the petitioner in writ petition number 572 of 2016, and Mr. Arvind P. Datar, Learned Senior Counsel for the petitioner in writ petition number 88 of 2018. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, similarly, at the time of independence, our manufacturers were restricted to a few simple things. Today, with the development that has taken place during the last 60 years, our industries have progressed to such an extent that India can manufacture products comparable with those of advanced countries. We have today reached a stage from where we can leap forward with greater energy and compete with others. Our scientists have shown to the world that they are capable of achieving the highest in the field of science. Our technocrats have proved that they can master all types of technology successfully. The path ahead is long. None can say that we have not traversed far enough during the last 60 years. We are building the India of our future on the foundations of development that have been soundly laid during these 60 years. We shall see to it that our industries grow and expand rapidly. We shall see to it that our youth get new and more opportunities of employment. We have to see that our productivity rises, prices go down, and quality improves. It should be our effort to associate our workers in the public sector units with management. We should ensure that our science and technology are not borrowed from foreign countries but develops in a way that benefits the country and also the poor people of the country. They should be able to meet our demands and requirements. We also have to see that they go ahead and see the work done in other parts of the world, meet the challenges, and show the way to the world. The most important thing, however, is that we should not allow our attention to be diverted. Our attention must be concentrated all the time on the poorest and the weakest person. In the field of agriculture, the production has increased a great deal. It has reached 150 crore tons, but we find that it is stagnating at 150 crore tons for the last 3 years. It is true that the monsoon has not been good during these years. Farmers in many regions and parts of the country have to face difficulties, but we are resolved to ensure that the farmers' produce is not affected by the vagaries of weather in future. We have to take steps to ensure increase in agricultural production in spite of adverse weather in our country. Some 70% of our population reside in rural areas and almost the same percentage of people are poor and they earn their livelihood in the agricultural farms. The number of agricultural laborers is much more than that of farmers. We have to pay special attention toward them. If we want to eradicate poverty, we have to begin with the farmers' fields. We have started spreading the green revolution and we are happy to see that during the last 2 years an improvement has been noticed for the first time in Uttar Pradesh. Improvement has also been noticed in Bihar, Orissa, and Bengal, where the output of farmers is increasing. Poverty has been reduced in the rural areas. At the same time, we have to pay special attention to the production of cotton, oil, seeds, and pulses. In this way, we will see that this will, with the spread of greenery, poverty would be gradually reduced and would ultimately vanish. This year, we have provided more resources than ever before for programs meant for eradication of poverty. At the same time, we have strengthened the administration as part of the poverty eradication program. I have myself traveled far and wide, and after seeing the work with my own eyes and discussing the matter with the officers, strengthened these programs and intensified them. Most important of all, we have treated education as a part of the poverty eradication program because as long as the children of the poor people do not get good education, poverty cannot be eradicated. Today, however, we find another problem before us, a very serious problem, that is of unemployment of the youth. We find signs of pessimism in our youth. Millions of our young people do not succeed in getting employment, and millions remain dissatisfied even after getting employment because they do not get what they want. We have to concentrate on the employment scene. There are some weaknesses and deficiencies in our setup. There is employment, there are jobs, but the education skills that are required to fill up the vacancies are not there. Millions of boys and girls are matriculate, millions of them are degree holders, but all cannot get white collar jobs. Why? We have taken care of these things. In our new education policy, it has been our endeavor to make up for the deficiency in our setup. Through this policy, we will ensure that the boys and girls coming out of schools and colleges get such education which provides them employment. At the same time, we will have to see that the rural employment programs are implemented to give maximum benefit to the people. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Honorable members, we have all witnessed the potential of India's youth power during the Tokyo Olympics. In its best performance ever in this international competition, India won 7 medals. In the Tokyo Paralympics too, India para athletes set a record by winning 19 medals. In order to improve India's performance in the Olympics and sports, the central government along with the state governments is setting up hundreds of Khelo India centers in the country. The government has also established centers for disability sports in Gwalior with modern facilities to provide training to Divyang youth in para sports. Accessibility, equality, and a dignified life for Divyang people is our collective responsibility as a society. In this direction, Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan is a symbol of our national sensibility. The country is implementing several programs in order to transform the lives of Divyang people. Under these programs, more than 25 lakhs assistive devices have been provided to Divyang people so far, and about 4,000 successful implant surgeries have been performed. Taking these efforts forward, the government has also established the National Institute of Mental Health Rehabilitation in Madhya Pradesh, a 10,000 word Indian Sign Language Dictionary has also been developed for the future of Divyang youth. Our startup industry is also an example of the infinite new possibilities that are rapidly taking shape under the leadership of our youth. Since 2016, 60,000 new startups have been established in 56 different sectors in our country. More than 6 lakh jobs have been created by these startups. In 2021, during the corona period, more than 40 unicorn startups have emerged in India, each with a minimum market valuation of rupees 7400 crore. Because of the policies of my government, the cost of internet connectivity and price of smartphones in India today are among the cheapest in the world. This has hugely benefited our young generation. India is also working with great pace on 5G mobile connectivity, which will open doors to new opportunities. India's efforts on semiconductors will significantly benefit our startup ecosystem. The government has taken many policy decisions and opened up several new sectors so that our youth can benefit from rapidly changing technology. Through the Startups Intellectual Property Protection Program, the government has simplified and accelerated the processes related to patents and trademarks, resulting in early 6,000 patents registered. Honorable members, due to consistent endeavors of my government, India has again emerged as one of the fastest growing economies in the world. GST collection has consistently remained above rupees 1 lakh crore during the last several months. Inflow of $48 billion in the first 7 months of the current financial year is a testimony to the belief the global investor community has in India's growth story. India's foreign exchange reserves today exceed $630 billion. Our exports are also growing rapidly, breaking several past records. During April to December 2021, our goods exports stood at $300 billion or more than rupees 22 lakh crore, which is 1.5 times more than the corresponding period of 2020. My government has launched 14 key PLI schemes with an outlay of more than rupees 1,97,000 crore to fully realize the potential of the manufacturing sector and to create new opportunities for the youth. These PLI schemes will not only help transform India as a global manufacturing hub but also create over 60 lakh jobs. The domestic mobile manufacturing sector is a shining example of the success of the PLI scheme. Today, India has emerged as the second largest mobile phone manufacturer in the world, generating lakhs of jobs for our youth. In order to develop our country as a global leader in the field of electronics and technology hardware, the government has also recently announced a package of rupees 76,000 crore for silicon and compound semiconductor fabrication, display FBA, chip design, and related ventures. Along with developing new areas, my government is restoring our traditional strength in domains in which we possess centuries of experience. In this direction, my government has approved 7 mega integrated textile regions and apparel parks with an investment of about rupees 4,500 crore. This will facilitate integrated textile value chain. These mega textile parks will attract both Indian and foreign investors and create lakhs of new employment opportunities. Along with large companies, our small and medium enterprises have a critical role in India's prosperity. Our MSMEs have been the backbone of our economy and a driver of Atmanirbhar Bharat. In order to protect MSMEs from crisis and ensure adequate availability of credit during the corona period, the government started a scheme for guaranteed collateral free loans of rupees 3 lakh crore. It is evident from the recent studies that this scheme has given a fresh lease of life to 13 lakh 50,000 MSME units. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, this entire discussion has been initiated by the Finance Minister. He feels somewhat optimistic about the economic situation. I confess that this is the one point on which I must disagree. The situation today is something that causes much concern. There is rising unemployment. The prices are also rising. Finance Minister feels that there is justification for viewing the situation hopefully because he thinks that the infrastructure are performing very well. I do not understand on what basis he has come to this conclusion. He says that the power generation is more satisfactory than last year. But should he be satisfied with power generation of 51%? Should the efficiency not be very much greater? There is no reason why the power stations should not be operating more efficiently, and unless you insist upon it, you cannot obtain a requisite degree of improvement in efficiency. But in any case, to be complacent and say that the infrastructure is performing well is a very strange. Similarly, in the case of coal, you put enormous sums of money in an industry which is also the next basic industry. The results are unsatisfactory. The production remains as unsatisfactory as ever while the costs are increasing. When he says the price situation is under control, I do not know on what basis the price situation is said to be under control. I am sorry that he places too much reliance upon statistics. The interpretation of statistics is important and they are capable of being manipulated in any manner as one would like in order to produce conclusion that one desires. Statistics are undoubtedly necessary. They have to be collected, but we have to judge them, we have to interpret them very carefully. I would say then, when the finance minister forms the conclusion in regard to price situation, he should ask the housewives and see what they have to think about the price situation. Inflation is really increasing, rising very seriously. Every household is deeply disturbed. In such a position, to say that the price situation is under control is scarcely right. What is still more unfortunate is the fact that so many decisions are being taken which must lead to further increase in price. The railways freight rates
have been increased within a year, and I do not know whether it is a part of the next budget exercise that is being carried on. Similarly, postal charges have been raised considerably, each of them resulting in a revenue increase of rupees 400 crores to rupees 500 crores of rupees. What can be the effect of all these increases? Then there is a administered prices which also continue to be administered upwards always and not downwards. What are the prices administered for? In order to see that the public sector enterprises produce revenues and increase budgetary revenues, it is quite clear that every step that is being taken like this must result in increase in prices. Further, Mr. Finance Minister says that tax revenues continue to display buoyancy. This is the one statement in regard to which I can have no difference of opinion. It is showing buoyancy. But there again, I would like to warn the finance minister that the buoyancy is not going to continue at the same rate and in the same manner that it has been in the past. At least, if it does so, I shall be very happy. But the chances of its being happening are small. He says the foreign exchange reserves are at comfortable level. I am very glad he thinks so. He may even say that they are comfortable. If they are at comfortable level, then there is certainly going to be greater drain upon it because steps being taken to stimulate exports further and so on and so forth. But I think the balance of payments position is precarious and, as he himself admits, is one of the issues which causes him concern, and quite rightly so. I would like to draw his attention to the fact that the imports have been liberalized and over liberalized as a stage when rupee is for all practical purposes devalued. Imports therefore must cost very much more and increase the chain on limited foreign exchange reserves. Liberalization of imports is necessary but only in highly selective areas. That was not done. I think in their initial enthusiasm they have overdone it. The second point of concern was about the rise of government expenditure. On that count, what has he done? Nothing is done. On the other hand, governmental expenditure has gone up and will go up now further because of the pay commissions recommendations which government has already implemented. There are other things which are beyond his control like the natural calamities which must be attended to. Substantial sums of money will have to be provided. I hope that the finance minister realizes that for the next year he has provided certain amount in his anticipatory budget about rupees 500 crores. Stop.